and welcome everybody to another wonderful episode of Veterinary Tales, where we dive into the stories and experiences of the victims from the veterinary and bad actors who would rather put their money, profession, whatever they think is best over the care of their patients. My name is Colleen. I will be your host for this evening, joined by the wonderful founder of Joey's Legacy, Mr. Scott Fine. Scott, how are you doing on Super Bowl Sunday evening?
Oh, absolutely wonderful. How are you, Colleen?
Doing well. Are you rooting for any particular team?
Not this year. I'm just kind of watching the game, when I can. And now my Bucks didn't make it, almost, but didn't quite make it. But maybe
catching the commercials though, at least after, right?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. And before we get started, I just want to say that the views and opinions that are expressed in this podcast, in this series, are those of authors that don't always reflect what the official policy or position of Joey's Legacy is. We're happy to have everyone joining us, though, and sharing their opinions. And we appreciate you being very open-minded and friendly to all in the comments and to our wonderful guests. So with that being said, we are so excited to welcome our wonderful guest this evening, Miss Debbie Lombardo, who will be sharing with us Mia's story. Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Good, Colleen. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me and for allowing me to share Mia's story.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Hi, Debbie. Good evening.
Hi, Scott.
Hi. All right. So tell us Mia's story. When did Mia come to live with you, and the years that have passed since, and what ultimately happened?
Okay. So Mia came to us on February 13, 2009, so which makes today Hagacha Day. And she was a surprise gift from my husband for Valentine's Day. And it was a Friday. It was Friday the 13th. And I came home from work, and my husband's sitting on the couch with this box that's decorated with hearts and bows. And I hear a little bark, and I know it's not my other dogs. So he opens the box, and he takes out the smallest dog I've ever seen in my life. She weighed about 1.5 pounds. And I got so excited, I started screaming like, "Oh my God." And she's shaking, she's scared. I didn't know she was sensitive to sound. So I go to run over to her. And, my husband's like, you're so noisy. You're scaring her. Take your shoes off and come here quietly. So I take my shoes off. I fall on the floor and literally break my foot. So now Mia is literally,
Oh my God.
So Mia is now petrified of me. She's shaking. She's barking. I have to go to the hospital. I come back. I'm in crutches. All of her first pictures are with me in crutches. So now she's petrified of me. And she wouldn't come near me for about a month. Every time she seen me, she barked. So she ended up forming a bond with my husband, at least, for the first month. And he was her person, and that was his baby girl. And he spent a real lot of time with her. And the two of them, they kind of had like their own secret little language. She used sign language with her, but it wasn't your typical sign language. It was their own language. And he spoke to her in Italian. And she used that upper edge over the other dogs and over me, because I didn't understand their sign language or Italian. And she eventually evolved into, the scared little puppy evolved into a fearless, strong dog. And she ended up having a lot of medical conditions. And she just showed so much strength, and she was so resilient through everything that she went through. And she was a little warrior. And losing her, was really tough, especially the way that we lost her. And, my husband, he lost his best friend. And she was 11 years old when she died. She died June 19th, 2020. So she died while she was in the care of Long Island Veterinary Specialists. They're a 24-hour ER critical care and specialty center. And it was a place that I've been using since they opened up in 1998. And they've treated almost all of my pets. They performed numerous surgeries on my pets. And, you know, they always had a great standard of care. It was my definite go-to place, my trusted place. And, you know, not only did I lose Mia, but I lost my trusted place too. So there were two major losses at the same time. Mm. So Mia's problem started early on. I would say at about 8 months old. She had an incident where she was vomiting blood like crazy. So we rushed her to the ER, and after, you know, numerous tests, they couldn't find out what was wrong. And then several tests, several other times, the same thing happened. And the test always came back inconclusive. And, you know, I made a connection that these incidents were happening every time she had beef. So now we established that she had a beef allergy. And then shortly after that, she developed the standard allergy. So she was under the care of the dermatologist there. And she was under their care from 2 years old until she died. And then there were other incidents like coughing incidents that turned out to be another allergy. She was allergic to everything. I mean, she was allergic to the air. And that's like well documented in all of her files, and her medical records were extensive. So then Mia went on to have other issues. That she had an eyelid tumor that she had to have removed. And while they were examining her, they noticed that she had a lump that turned out to be a mammary gland tumor. And that had to be removed. And with each of these surgeries, she recovered well with anesthesia. And then after the mammary gland tumor, the eyelid tumor came back. So she had to have another surgery. And then she was fine for a little while, and she had a seizure-like episode. So I rushed her there, and they examined her. They didn't think it was a seizure, and they did an MRI, and they found that she had something wrong with her neck. And it was called AOO, which is kind of like a Chiari malformation. And they were very interested in Mia's case because this place was like a pioneer in studying Chiari malformation. And they actually had the Chiari Malformation Institute there. So they wrote a lot of medical articles on it, and they did a lot of educational speeches on it. So I felt if Mia had this condition, this is the best place for her to be. And they asked me to periodically, fill them in on what was going on. And Mia did well. She didn't have another episode for probably about 6 to 8 months. And then she had another episode. And I brought her back in, and they examined her. And they still felt that she didn't need any type of surgical intervention. And they had just acquired an integrative vet at that time. And the owner of the hospital said, you may want to try the integrative vet and try acupuncture. It may give her some relief. So I was like, okay, he got me in there the same day. So she started seeing the integrative vet, and the acupuncture worked immediately. And then the acupuncture vet, Dr. Selmer is his name, he started treating her allergies with Chinese herbs and nutrition. And I had like a new dog, all the problems that she had, he was really resolving a lot of the issues. And in fact, Mia did such a great job that they had before and after pictures that they used for their marketing, to get more clients. And while Mia was there, during one of the examinations, he had noticed that Mia had another lump and she would need surgery again. So he coordinated with the surgery department for her to have surgery, and she had the surgery, and again, she did well. It was just this time it came back that they found some cancer cells. So the plan was to treat her again with Chinese medicine. And once again, the Chinese medicine really worked and she was doing great. And while we were having that discussion, I asked Dr. Selmer, I said, can you run a test for Cushing's? I think Mia has Cushing's. And him and the surgeon looked at me and they said, Mia doesn't have Cushing's. And I was like, well, can you just run the test? And they said, you know, the test is really expensive. And I said, I know, you run all kinds of tests and charge me tons of money anyway. Just run this test. So they ran the test and Mia had Cushing's. So now I asked him, how are we going to treat her? I know how we treated my other dog. And he said, no, we're not going that route. That's a cancer medicine. It's no good for her. We're going to, again, use a mixture of herbs. So we did lignans and melatonin. And Mia was doing great. And, you know, she had follow-up tests and the Cushing's were doing great. Her numbers were wonderful. So everything was going good. And then what started happening is it was probably about December of 2019. The integrative vet, it was harder to get an appointment with him. They were really marketing him a lot. So you couldn't get an appointment with him. And when you did get an appointment with him, he didn't have much time to spend with you. And a lot of the things that he did, he now had vet techs and vet tech assistants doing. And also we had the coronavirus in Europe. And I said to my husband, you know, it's a matter of time before it comes here. We need to get a different integrated vet, hopefully one that comes to our house. And he thought I was nuts. So I found an integrated vet and she started to come to my house in February. Mia stopped going to Dr. Selmer in January. So it was February that she started coming. And luckily, because they closed the country down a short time after that. And so now Mia's doing great with the new integrative vet. And it was in May. And Mia was making a noise in her mouth, and she thought that Mia had a dental issue. And she was trying to look, and she said, you know, I can't see. You need to take her to a dentist. So I asked her if she had a recommendation, and she did. There's like one real dentist that serves Long Island and New York City. And I tried to get an appointment, and you couldn't. They were backed up for like 4 or 5 months. So I decided to make an appointment at Liv's with Dr. Lowen. And the reason I chose Dr. Lowen is she had done a dental before on another dog. And she also was the author of a lot of articles on AOO. So she knew about the head, the neck, and I figured that would be the best place to go. So we had our consultation on May 12th of 2019. And it was curbside. So they picked Mia up and took her inside, and I got the phone call. And she said, you know, Mia doesn't have any infections. And she said, you know, she's got typical Yorkie teeth. And, you know, it's not a rush. And you can make an appointment down the line and we'll do a dental and we'll probably do a few extractions. And she said, I would like to also do a CAT scan to see if there's anything going on. So she said, I'm going to send you a treatment plan and there's no charge for today. So I was happy. I figured I bought some time. Mia didn't have to go under anesthesia again. So we go home, and also right before I took her, we had got another Yorkie puppy. So Mia kept trying to get the puppy's food. And since she's allergic to everything, I kept trying to get her away from it. So it was now June 2nd, 2 weeks after the first visit. Mia gets into the puppy's food. And, I grab it from her and I yell at her and I tell her, you're not allowed to touch that. Go lay down. So she goes up on the sofa and I go back to work. And I hear her like pacing back and forth. And it was a lot that she was going back and forth. So I turn around and I see Mia collapse. And she's just there and she has foam coming out of her mouth. And she has all kinds of bubbles coming out of her nose. And I pick her up and I'm opening her mouth to see if, maybe there was something stuck in there, the puppy's food. And I'm screaming to my husband at that point. I'm like, Joe, stop the car. We got to get to Liv's. And, we're in the car and my husband's flying there. And I call up Liv's and I tell them, listen, I tell them what happened. And I'm like, listen, I can't do the curbside. You got to have somebody outside when I get there. You have to grab her immediately. And they did. As soon as we pulled up, they were waiting. They grabbed me. And while they're doing triage, the ER doctor calls me. And, I tell her what happened. And she's like, do you want a DNR? And I was like, of course I want a DNR. I brought it to you. Of course, do whatever you can to keep her alive. So she said, all right, you're going to have to go home. We have a lot of tests to run and we'll give you a call. So we went home and a couple of hours later they called and they ran, blood tests, x-rays and everything. And they said everything came out normal. She said, and, the only thing they think that it could be is that she aspirated. And she said, the only way to tell for sure if she aspirated would be to redo the x-ray in 48 hours. And I said, all right, so is that the plan? And she said, no, we don't need to redo it because we would treat her the same way if it was aspiration pneumonia or not. So we're going to put her on some antibiotics right now and we're going to keep her overnight. And she said, we're going to switch her to the surgery department and she'll be in intensive care. We'll call you in the morning. So morning time comes and now Dr. Lowen is in charge of her case because she's in charge of surgery in the residence. So she calls me up and she says, Mia did really, really good last night. And I want to keep her for another night because she didn't eat. I said, Mia's not going to eat. She said, well, I would feel better if she ate. I said, look at Mia's records. You will see every time she was hospitalized there, she never ate. In fact, Mia was trained specifically to never take food from strangers. I said, unless I come there, she's not eating. She's like, well, I can't release her. So that was $800 for that night, in addition to everything else. She calls me in the morning and I said, how's Mia? She's like, Mia did great. I said, did Mia eat? She said, no, but I'm going to release her anyway. So I don't know why that day made a difference, but so she's like, I'll have my assistant call you and you can pick up Mia. And then I want you to come back in 2 weeks for a follow-up. So Mia came home and she was doing great. She was back to herself. So I made a follow-up appointment, and I have another dog that needed to see the dermatologist. So I said, let me make both appointments the same day, have to sit in that parking lot. So I staggered the appointments. And like I said, Mia was doing great. The day before the follow-up visit, Mia got into the puppy food again. And now she started coughing. So when I bring her for the follow-up, Dr. Lowen's assistant called me, and he said, tell him what's going on. I said, look, you're going to notice that she's coughing. That coughing is from the puppy food. She got into the puppy food. She's allergic to kibble. And he's like, that's interesting. Like, I'm stupid. Like, I don't know my dog. He's like, well, we'll look at her. So they examine her, and Dr. Lowen calls me and said, I'm concerned about the cough and the snorting. I told her about the cough. I said, and the snorting, I said, Mia's been doing that since she's a puppy. She does that when she's nervous. She's like, well, I really think we should do a CAT scan. She said, in fact, I strongly suggest that we do a CAT scan. And I told her, I said, I'm a little apprehensive about doing it because she aspirated 2 weeks ago. And should a dog that aspirated 2 weeks ago go into anesthesia? And she said, I'm completely comfortable with that. She has a strong heart. Her lungs are good. And she's tolerated anesthesia in the past very well. She said, she's here now. Rather than upset her, why don't you let her stay the night? And I won't charge you. So, I wasn't even thinking clearly, because while I'm on the phone with her, my husband's on the other side speaking to the dermatologist. So I wasn't really on my game. And I said, okay, and I didn't ask a ton of questions. So she sent out her assistant. And so she came out with paperwork. I mean, basically all they wanted was my credit card and to sign, the release forms. So the assistant comes out, and I said, Victoria, explain to me again what they're going to do. So she said, they're going to do a CAT scan. And if they find something, they're going to biopsy it. And if they don't, they're just going to go ahead and do the dental. She said, it's a nothing procedure. We're going to take really good care of her. You have nothing to worry about. So I said, all right. And she goes, and if you feel, if it'll make you feel better, I'll give you a call tonight before I leave to let you know how Mia is doing. So I said, okay. And so she gave me the paper to sign. So I signed the paper, and she's like, you have to sign, there's 2 more pages. And they were blank pages that I signed. And like an idiot, I signed the 2 blank pages that they probably took my signature and transferred over to something else. So Victoria was good to her word. She called me before she left, about 9, 10 o'clock at night. She said, Mia's doing really good. She's comfortable in her cage. And she said, they'll call you in the morning. So it's about 10 o'clock. Dr. Larkin calls, and he's like, hi, it's Dr. Larkin. I just want to let you know, Mia's doing well. We didn't do a procedure yet because we had a couple of emergencies, so it kind of pushed her back. He's like, and we'll call you as soon as it's done. Don't stress out. No news is good news. So I said, okay. So, I'm trying to busy myself. It's about 12:30. Comes up with my caller ID, Libs. I pick up the phone, and she's like, hi, it's Dr. Lowen. How you doing? I said, I'm good. How's Mia? She said, Mia's heart stopped. And I was stunned. And I was like, what do you mean her heart stopped? She's like, I don't know. She was getting the CAT scan and her heart. I was like, are you doing CPR? And she hesitated, and she said, yeah, they're doing CPR now. I said, well, how is she doing? Is she responding? And she said, I'll call you back in 15 minutes. So I tell my husband, Joe, let's go. I'm not waiting 15 minutes. So we get in the car and we get there in like 6 or 7 minutes. And the car's still moving. I jump out of the car and I run in the place. And it's COVID restrictions. You're not even allowed in there. So I run into the place and I see someone that I know. And she's like, what's up? I was like, is Lowen here? And she said, she's doing a procedure now. I said, is she with Mia? And she says, no. What's wrong with Mia? I was like, Mia died. And I was like, I need to see Lowen. And she didn't know what to say. So she said, all right. And she opens one of the exam rooms and said, wait there, Lowen will come and see you when she's done. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, my dog just died less than 10 minutes ago. And you're performing another procedure? Like, that's not even human. But, I wasn't thinking straight. So I call my husband. I'm like, Joe, park the car and just come in. Just barge right in. I'm in the exam room too. I'll open the door for you. So he comes in and we're waiting maybe like another 15, 20 minutes. And finally, Dr. Lowen walks in. And you could tell she's a little agitated. I guess she didn't really expect us to come there. And it's COVID and I didn't have my mask on because I needed to speak to her. And I could tell, like I said, she's agitated. So I asked her, what happened? And she said, she didn't know. I said, was it the anesthesia? And she's like, it wasn't. I said, did you give her the anesthesia? And she hesitated and she said, I personally administered the anesthesia. I said, did you personally do the CAT scan? And she said, I did. So I said, so what do you think happened? I said, I need, some closure. And she's like, I think it was her heart. So I said, her heart? You told me yesterday that her heart and her lungs were strong. Plus she also had these other tests. I said, and all those tests showed that she had a good heart. And she said, I don't know. I also saw there were black specks. I was like, where were the black specks? And she's like, they were in her head and on her neck. I said, so are you saying that maybe she had brain cancer? And she said, I don't know. I'm not a radiologist. I don't even know how to read these reports. She said, I'll give you a call back after I get the radiology report. And I said, can I see Mia? And she said, I'll have Victoria bring her out to you. So, of course, before they bring me my dog, they bring me, the paperwork, and she wants to discuss the balance. And it turns out that they actually owed me money back. So, I fill out the paperwork and she goes to get Mia. And my husband said, Deb, I can't do it. I got to go wait in the car. I cannot see her like that. So I said, go ahead. I said, I need to see her. So, she brings Mia out and she's really cold. So it had been probably a lot longer than they had said. So I leave, I go home and I wait for the call. So about 3:30, Dr. Lowen calls me. And I said, did you get the results back? And she says, yes. I said, what were the black specks? And she said, they were air. I said, so what do you think happened? And she says, I don't know. I said, so you don't have any idea? Was it her heart? And she said, I don't know if it was her heart. I said, with all the doctors there that you have, all the specialists, no one has an idea what happens. She just went in and she just died. And I said, should I do a necropsy? And she said, that's not necessary. She goes, and besides, if you were to do it, you would have to personally drive her to the nearest teaching school. She was not 600 miles away, which later I found out is not true, that I wouldn't have to, personally drive her there. So I said to her, no one knows. She goes, well, I spoke to Dr. Marino and he thinks he may have heard of this happening once or twice before, with, maybe from the dye, there was a bad reaction. So I said to her, you used a dye on her? Like, you never told me that you were using the dye. I said, so you basically, she had an anaphylactic shock. I said, so here's a dog that has well-documented allergies that has been treated for the past 10 years at your hospital, and you gave her a dye? And she said, Mia was going to die anyway.
Oh.
And I said, we're all going to die someday. I said, but Mia was not going to die today. And at that point, I just figured we were going in circles and it wasn't going in a good place. And the best thing to do was to end the conversation. And that's what I did. And, I went to my computer and I'm looking up, dogs dying from CAT scans. And I couldn't find anything, but I did find, and I don't know how I missed it, there were 2 dogs that died at the same facility getting an MRI. And both stories appeared in the New York Post. So I'm reading the articles, and one of them, Harold Lear, he was pursuing litigation and he was suing them in New York Supreme Court. So I go online and I pull up the case and I notice it's the same doctor that he's suing. But I didn't read the case. I wanted to call the lawyer. So I called him and I know, he can't tell me anything. So I explained what happened and he's like, I can't tell you anything that's going on with the case. He said, but I do suggest that you read the complaint. He said, read the case. He's like, and if you need to speak to me, I can't talk about this case. And he said, and I'm not doing animal law anymore. He's like, but just feel free to call me. So I hung up with him, and then I'm also trying to balance and have normalcy in my house because, my husband's devastated and I have other pets, and one of my pets has epilepsy. So I don't want her to start seizing. And so, we're just keeping everything calm in the house. I call Libs and I requested to get my medical records. And they said, all right, we'll send them right over. And I didn't get them. So the next day I call again and, I says, maybe you forgot, maybe you were busy. Can you please send me his medical records over? Because basically I just wanted to call the crematory, make me his final arrangements, send her paperwork to the insurance company, and really just get ready to mourn my dog. I wanted to be done with the paperwork. So they still didn't send it. On Monday, I get in touch with Victoria. I email her and I'm like, Victoria, can you please send, me his records? And I only needed the one day that she was there when she died because I had all the previous records. So Victoria writes me back and she says, I'm not in today, but I'm going to call a colleague and I'll have the colleague send them to you. And I still didn't get it. And now this went on for several days and I'm getting really upset now. And because I've had so many pets there and I've never waited more than like an hour for the medical records. So finally, after calling so many times, I called this girl and I said, what's taking so long? And she said, well, we have to wait for Dr. Lowen to sign off on them and she's been out. I said, that's ridiculous. No one's ever had to sign off on medical records. So she said, look, I'm going to do my best. I says, listen, don't do your best. Just get it done. Because if I don't get the medical records by today, you're going to hear from me. I said, it's bad enough that you guys killed my dog. I said, now you're really just extending my pain and suffering.
Right.
And I need those records. So I think like a couple of hours later, Victoria sends me the records. And I didn't even look at them, because it was the end of the day. So the next day, I print the records, and it was a bunch of records. Oh, and one thing I left out, which is important, is when I spoke with Dr. Lowen, when I was at the clinic, she said to me, I'm going to send the records to Dr. Hagenson. So I was like, don't send to Dr. He's not my vet. So she said, oh, who's your vet? I said, Dr. Selma. So she looked at me, she's like, who? I said, Dr. Michael Selma. She's like, my colleague? I said, yeah, and she had a smile on her face. And that's important because, so now when I get the medical records, the ones I had up until the day Mia died, all were addressed to Dr. Hagenson. Now I get a whole new set of records dating back to the dental consultation on May 12th. And now this has Dr. Michael Selma, and they all have Dr. Michael Selma. And I have all these records, and I'm getting confused because some of the dates didn't match up. There was like another date. So I'm putting them together, and then I'm looking at the little disclosures, and they were different. So I'm looking at them, and I wanted to make sure, so, I keep going over them to make sure. And when I'm 100% sure that the records were changed, I burst out crying. And my husband's working in the office with me, and he's like, Deb, what's the matter? And I said, they killed Mia. And he's like, they wrote that in the record. And I was like, no, Joe, they didn't write in the record that they killed her. I said, they changed all the records. And he's like, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm definitely filing a complaint. So I, went on the website, and I downloaded the complaint form, and I drafted my complaint, and I faxed it over to OPD. And I knew it was going to be a wait. And then I decided, and then I called the lawyer, and I told him I filed a complaint. And he said, send it to me. I want to just look at it. So he looked at it, and he said, it's good. He's like, and they're not going to get her on any of the other things, but they will get her on the record keeping. He's like, that's the one thing they look for. So, I said, that's good. He's like, did you read the complaint? And I said, I didn't read the complaints, but I promise you, I'm going to read the complaint. So I go online, and I start reading his complaint, and the complaint was like a mirror image of what happens with Mia. Same thing. She strongly suggested a medically unnecessary test. And, just so many things. And she also, like with Mia, didn't run a CBC test, didn't do an x-ray before, even though Mia had the x-rays when she went, when I rushed her to the hospital. Too much time had passed. She really needed to have new blood work and a new x-ray. So just on a side note, I go and I pull out my other dog's record, my dog Marley, that had a CT scan from her. And I'm looking at that, and she also didn't run any blood work on him, didn't do an x-ray on him, just sent him straight through the CAT scan. And, Marley died 2 weeks after the CAT scan of a brain aneurysm. But at the time, I didn't even look into it. I just accepted it for what it was. And now I have second thoughts even with Marley. So I go back, I'm reading the complaint, and besides there being so many similarities, this lawyer managed to get a lot of complaints from people, and he didn't get them from a FOIA request. People voluntarily gave him the complaints. And there was one complaint that really stood out because it was done by a veterinarian. And he had filed a complaint with the American College. He was a resident there at one time, and he happens to be a very well-known, well-respected surgeon on Long Island, a really good guy. So he wrote a complaint to the American College of whatever, and he was talking about how Dr. Lowen and the owner, they were kind of connected in an affair type of way. This is his words. And he said that they had a lot of residents performing surgeries that they shouldn't, and they signed off on surgeries, and that all of the residents were all encouraged to upsell products, that it was a way that they, it was very profitable to them, and they just did it. So I was like really upset when I read that. And, you know, I guess I was looking for more information, and I went on the internet looking up malpractice. And that's when I found Joey's Legacy. And I immediately joined the Facebook group, and I just couldn't believe not only how many members there were, but how many cases there were. And they were all, and it, you know, I think at first it was like misery likes company. So like I found a group, like a group you never want to be a part of, but people that you can kind of understand. And I'm reading them and I'm just thinking, this is an epidemic. This is like so widespread, and it's the dirty secret of the veterinarian industry that most pet parents don't even know exist. And at the time, you were starting to get ready to do the book. And, you know, I asked if I can submit Mia's story, and, you know, you allowed me, and I'm very thankful for that. And during that time, you know, it got me, it was very painful doing it, but it got me to reflect a lot. And it made me very anxious. I felt like I was getting power back, because I knew when the book came out, I had a tangible tool now that I can go out to people and say, it's real. Here's a whole bunch of documented cases. So that really kept me going. And so now the summer passed, and, you know, I did the book. I finally get a call from New York State OPD. And the woman calls me, and she, you know, she told me she read my, you know, my complaint, and she said she felt my pain, and she wanted to assure me. She said, I want you to understand where I'm coming from. She said, I was handpicked for your case. She said, our agency handles 52 different licensings. She goes, and they handpicked me to take care of your case. She said, because I'm an animal advocate. She said, I used to be a vet tech. She goes, and I left that and I worked for the ASPCA, and I arrested people for animal cruelty. She said, I spent my life fighting for animals. And truthfully, I didn't really believe her. And after we got off the phone, I looked her up, and she was on a reality show on Pet TV. She was the ASPCA police. So she told me that she was really going to do her best. She told me not to expect a lot. She said, because, the hands are tied. She said, we have very limited abilities of what we can do. She said, very rarely do they lose a license. She said, the most she'll probably get is a fine. She said, but, it's going to be a long process and you're going to be waiting a while. She goes, but for whatever it's worth, Dr. Lowen's going to, she's going to be called out, she's going to be questioned, and she's going to be waiting too. So she's going to have a lot of anxiety. She goes, and I hope you find some comfort in that. So, and then we also spoke off the record, because she also has pets, and we shared a lot of the same vets, and we also talked off the record about Harold Lear, that other case that was filed in, and she gave me her personal opinion on that. And, and she told me, she goes, and I promise you, I am going to handpick the people that are going to review your case. She said, and I can assure you that it will not be anyone from Nassau, Suffolk, Queens, or New York City. It will not be anyone that has a connection to Libs, not anyone that does any business with them. I'm going to pick somebody far upstate, 600-700 miles away. So I said, okay, and I was appreciative of that. And I called her a few times, and she was like, Debbie, I told you have to be patient. This takes time. We're doing the best that we can. And, I was like, there's nothing more that I can really do. And I waited, and it was a year and 3 months. And I finally got a letter. And the letter said, that they received my complaint and my case was referred to the prosecution department. And they said that someone will be getting in touch with me from the prosecution department to discuss the case. And they will fill me in, with the outcome. And they thanked me for bringing the case to their attention. So I don't know where it's going to go from there. But I feel good that at least it's there, because it definitely has to cause her some pain and anguish. And that's a lot different than a lawsuit, because I've also been following the case that's going on in the Supreme Court. And this case is going on since 2018. And the vets don't care, because they have their, professional liability insurance that pays for it. And then they have their lawyers that stall everything and ask for discovery, and, they don't care. And in the end, they're going to end up settling for a couple of bucks, and, they're not worried. So I'm hoping that with this will have some type of impact on her career. I hope that it has an impact on her license. I don't care if it's just a $500 fine. I just know when I go on OPD and I look up the cases and the people that were disciplined, I just want to see her name there, because it'll be there forever. And maybe I'm just getting too hopeful and I'm too optimistic, but I need to look forward to something. And, and that's why I think, Joey's legacy is really important. It's important that we have the book, we have the shirts, and every time I go out, I'm always in a Joey legacy. And my husband, it cracks him up, because he's like, I can't believe you're going into a vet's office with it. And I told him, I really don't give a shit. I got the power when I go, and I have a vet that comes to my house every single week. My other dog gets acupuncture. And I told her, I don't want to be insulting you, but, I just have to wear this. And I gave her a book, and we drive around with the books. And my husband has Joey's legacy sticker on his car. And it's kind of funny, because my husband's name is Joe Lombardo, and his plate is JL. So you can imagine the attention that he gets when he's at the car wash or a coffee shop somewhere. They're like, oh, JL, Joey's Legacy. And he's like, no, JL is me. Joey's Legacy. And he takes out a book and he tries to tell them, the best that he can, because he doesn't follow it the same way that I do. And it's really important, the book is important. The book too is important. The problem that I found with the book and networking is with Corona, with COVID, and you can't network the same way that I would have been able to network in the past. I do try to, when I go to the dog store or something, that's why the documentary has to come out, because it's a totally different vehicle that with lockdowns and whatever's going on, it can still reach people.
Right.
It's very important. And, anyone who's watching this, if you can donate $5, it's $5 is the same price as a Starbucks coffee, donate. If you can't donate, share Joey's Legacy, because we have to get the documentary out. We have to stop this. We can't we can't let them get away with it. And people have to, know about it. And if anyone's going to donate on Tuesday, double your money, from now until I think March 29th, it's going to be Giving Tuesday, and double your dollars. So donate to Joey's Legacy. It's important. And, and I spend a lot of my time every day online. I go on Google reviews for all the vets in my area. I go on Yelp and I look for people that, I don't look for it. I hate when I see that something bad happens, but when I do see that something bad happens, I try to reach out to them. So if they're on Facebook, I reach out to them and I try to direct them to Joey's Legacy. And we do have people that I located that joined Joey's Legacy, and other people that I find on Yelp. I do research for a living, so I try to hunt them down. It's not really the right thing to do, but I do it anyway because they have an important message. And, when I get in touch with them, I ask them if they filed a complaint. And most people don't even know that there's a state board. Most people think you go to the Better Business Bureau or Consumer Affairs. And I let them know, that's not where you need to go. We actually have an agency. And I'm like, if you don't mind, I'll send you a complaint form with instructions. And if you tell me the city that you live in, I'll tell you where to send it. And it's important. I'm like, even if you don't want to sue, you really need to get the complaints on record.
Right.
We need to flood the board with complaints. They need to see how severe it is. And, we need to do this. We're stronger in numbers and we need to do it. And Scott, I really need to thank you for, having your mission, your dedication, and for being the voice for the voiceless. This is a really huge movement. And we need help, everybody. We need help. We need donations.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate those very kind words. And, we're starting to get a lot of people from that have had bad experiences with vet number one. They go to vet number two for follow-up care or for their other family members. And vet number two hears the story about vet number one. And they've actually said to their new clients, there's this place called Joey's Legacy, go see what they can do against vet number one. So you've got the ethical vets who appreciate Joey's Legacy. They may not want to sign on and review records, but they are, they support us. And so I think we're making some progress. The word is getting out. We've got 56 new cases since January 1st, which is absolutely outrageous, unacceptable. And we're just pedaling as fast as we can. That's why we always need some great vets to join us so they can They can be there to help review records, and they have to realize that this problem is not going to go away as long as there's no accountability. And with their opinion letters, that will provide several options for the parent to either go to small claims court, go through one of our lawyers. There's a number of options available to them, and it's very important that people share the mission of Joey's legacy. If they're not able to donate even $5, that's fine. It's actually more valuable if you let others know, and some of those people may be able to donate. So, look, there's so many things that are common in all of these stories, and where you said, I think you said Mia had passed, and they're already talking about the balance, settling the balance. That's just totally no class, and I guess that's how they roll, and it's just so sad. Well, look, Debbie, thank you for being on here, sharing your story. I know it's not easy. I mean, it's 4.5 years for me, and I still have a hard time doing it, sharing Joey's story, but it has to be done. The story has to be told so people can have enough, inspiration, can be inspired enough to stand up and fight. And the more people that do, the quicker we'll see change. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Colleen, do you have anything that you want to say?
No, I'm just appalled and horrified that happened to you, and I'm so sorry. And I know you're not the only one, so I appreciate all the work that you're doing, and to you, Scott, as well, and Joey's legacy. And we'll keep fighting the good fight and get this documentary out.
Great.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.